The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening and welcome to the No Treason podcast. This is episode 34, Ether series number 8, and we are live. We've got Polly back. He had some family stuff last week that was, like I said, a good thing, but we were able to pry him away this evening, so that's a good thing. And believe it or not, up in the cold, frozen wasteland of Michigan, you can still get sunburned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely did.
We see some usual suspects in the chat. Good to see you. EC was here. Lizzie Boston. Shannon, good to see you. S. Heisler, Sod This. Welcome, everyone. Green Zone, good to see you. This is actually going to be the last of the initial introductory series into the ether. So a nice, neat, and tidy 8 number. We've certainly just scratched the surface. There's as deep as you want to go. There are layers to peel back, and I personally enjoy doing that. Like I said, you can join me and Polly over in the No Treason podcast Telegram chat. That's t.me/the No Treason podcast. Just click on one of the posts and then click on like comment and allow you to join the actual chat part. We've had some good conversations and stuff over there, but we're going to have to wrap up the series this evening. But we have a lot of good stuff coming up tonight. But first, last week, we broadened the explanatory power of this overall unified paradigm of reality by saying that gravity isn't a unique force, such as modern physics would like us to think of it as. It's not a property of a mass. The Earth doesn't have a gravitational field. It's not really a field in and of itself. Instead, it is the response of the field to the dielectric tension present between and caused by two physical objects. And it's the same response that the field, i.e. the ether, always does. It's the centripetal, the inertial. You'll hear the term grounding a lot tonight. We talked about that last week as well. It's the grounding of the tension and the magnetic back to the ether itself, back to counter space. I see Funky Pam sauntered on in here. Claire Cat, good to see you. So understanding that that matter is the ether, essentially condensed, like condensation in the ether. And it's the after effect, really, of light, which, of course, is a propagating field perturbation. And it's propagating at such a high frequency that it literally excites the ether into a stable geometry. You can think of it as like a standing wave in the ether. You look up videos of standing waves. And you understand then that stable geometry has its own effect on the medium that surrounds it. And then you understand that two objects in proximity to each other effectively cause a churning of the ether, a stressing of the ether that needs to be resolved. The logical conclusion is that the ether resolves that tension the way it resolves all tension, through centripetal grounding, dielectric vortex grounding, draining back to nature's most fundamental ground, counter space, i.e. the ether itself. Last week we called this voidance, because that's exactly what is happening. And what is being voided? What is it that the dielectric sink is draining? Literally space itself. Not outer space, but just space, volume, the spatial visible realm. It's the spatial expression of the ether, magnetism. It's being sucked back into, you could call it a low pressure zone of the ether. We've talked about how everything is pressure mediation, and pressure is just kind of a placeholder word to describe lots of different phenomena that has the same basic idea to it, and there'll be more on that later. This explains magnetic attraction, static cling, and any and all phenomena we might refer to as gravity. Tonight, we're going to discuss that a bit further. Polly's got some good videos that he put together describing what anti-gravity might be. And then we'll cover some more aspects of some of the things that we've covered, kind of tying out some loose ends. And then we'll wrap up the series with a focus on the theological. But first, we've got a word from the infomaster of the InfoWar quartermaster. There we go. Little tongue.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard MyPillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
And next up, we have a word from Save Pulse. Unexpected health emergencies don't wait, and with Save Pulse, you can stay prepared. From trusted medications like amoxicillin, azithromycin, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine, to the medical emergency kit designed to help support over 30 common illnesses, Save Pulse makes it easy to stock up on essential health supplies. At Save Pulse, keeping your family prepared has never been easier, and it's all delivered through a simple, streamlined ordering process at prices you can feel good about. Whether you need an emergency kit or you're stocking up on everyday essentials, now's the time to be ready for whatever comes your way. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/meds, promo code Badlands. And usually I am rushing to turn my phone off here. I'm rushing to try to meet up with like match the time limit. And I'm usually too long-winded in the reading, and this time I beat the video. Next up, we've got the ghost of Bass Patrick Henry as the Lotion Raider.
A long, long time ago, a raider went into a dangerous cave. Because he was on an adventure. Or like he smelled like an adventure. But the cave was protected by spiders and lizards. No, it was snakes. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Whatever it was, the raider wasn't scared of it because it was Ghost, the Lotion Raider. Then he found the golden deodorant. That's not deodorant, that's the towel bar. It was soft disclosure. Ghost had exactly 1 second to switch it, or the whole cave explodes. And then the boulders started chasing him. Run, Ghost, run! Oh no, he dropped the sausage closure. I got it. I understand its power now. Lotion is an important artifact and it belongs in every household. Visit justiceclosure.com and use promo code LotionWaiter for 15% off.
Got some more people slinking into the chat. We got Escape the Matrix, Jessica Storm sneaking in quietly and then making a scene. We have, last but not least, we've got Gart Deadwood coming up, like right around the corner. We are expected to, let's see, Ash and I have been working on a trial by jury experience, and we're kind of coming down to the wire. We're working on it for quite a while, but that's going to be a feature of at least the in-person experience overall. Hope we're going to try to figure out a way to get the virtual people involved as well. But if you're a first timer for GART, whether it's in person or virtual, get your tickets at badlandsmedia.tv/events. And I showed this on the live stream for the ticket holders, but this is the bullwhip that I've been working on that will be raffled off. And actually, it's the basic style is based off of the whip in the third Indiana Jones that Indy uses against the lion, but I added the white to make it more Badlands Media themed. So, and whoever wins that whip, make sure you come up to me and ask how to use it so that you don't lose an ear, because that can happen.
Don't use it in the street. That's about
yeah, not in the street. And yeah, I have broken my own skin open with the whip, and it's extremely painful. Yeah, Evan's going to be there. Escape the Matrix. I'm looking forward to seeing him again. I saw him in Nashville, so it'll be good to see him again and get the crew back together. Okay, Polly, you were not here last weekend, so you kick us off because you had some thoughts and ideas. So I think the first thing that you wanted to bring up was the copper pipe and the magnet. So why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I'm glad you showed that. The magnet showing the gravity effect through the copper pipe. That effect is what's called an eddy current. I wanted at some point to show that, and show eddy currents in action. That's an easy way to do it.
Can you define what you mean by eddy current?
Well, it is that's the name that they gave for it. It is the copper, the dielectric reflector, the copper is acting against the magnetism. It's actually having a braking effect on it so that it's not falling at the same rate of gravity as it normally would.
So the analogy that we gave with describing how an electric generator works, which is effectively these two components, you have copper and you have a magnet, and it's just the way that you relate them to each other, and that you have at the plane of inertia at the halfway point of the magnet, which we can see on the magnetic viewing film. That's that white line there at the center of the magnet. That's like a dielectric flywheel that is the engine of this magnetic field. And as that is passing through, that plane of inertia flywheel is essentially rubbing up against the dielectric flywheels of each little atomic dynamo, and they're kind of resisting that interplay.
As if they're spinning up and fighting against each other.
Yeah. So it'd be like letting the clutch out of your car and feeling your engine start to bog down a little bit because it's now having to give up some of its rotational energy.
Yeah, it's like an ether drag.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's exactly the spinning magnet inside of a copper coil is exactly what a motor is and how electricity is manifested.
That's not generated.
Moving the magnet across the dielectric reflector. That's what would be commonly called electromagnetic induction. We have a short clip. It's only a few seconds long that we could show.
A simple coil, and it has a very important role in designing many machines. When you connect the coil with a supply, it starts converting electric energy into magnetic field. Now let's take a different case. When a magnet is suddenly put near to the coil, an EMF rises at the ends of the coil. But this EMF will disappear as our magnet stops moving. If we pull magnet in opposite direction, EMF will also start producing in opposite direction. For producing EMF continuously, we have to keep our magnet moving. It is called electromagnetic induction. This phenomenon is used in countless applications. Like the video, and don't forget to hit the subscribe.
All right, so there's that.
Right, yep. So basically what you had there with the magnet dropping through the tube, if that were wire, you were only 2 steps short of having a motor that you could light a light bulb with. Or
yeah.
something.
Which, of course, the way that you get that into a generator is you take the magnet, or some of them have magnets on the outside, and then the coil spins on the inside, and you use a windmill or a water wheel, like a hydroelectric turbine or something like that, that is rotating the magnet for you, and that is creating the electrical current along the conductor through induction. Which you mentioned that Michael Faraday was the one who discovered that.
Yeah. Yep. It will generate either electricity and or heat. Yeah, that's Michael Faraday. Yep.
Which, going back to our bounded light versus unbounded light, it's electricity, bounded light, or heat, unbounded light, radiative heat, because it's all the same thing. Oh yeah, Kelly loves oak, or your bike pedals. Yep, that's if you had the little lamp on the front of your bike that had the wheel that attached to your front wheel, and you could feel, by the way, that it would produce drag on your bike. You would feel the extra effort required because of the same reason why dropping the magnet through the copper tube, it's resisting that interaction. And that's where you end up getting resistance like if you spin a motor, it doesn't just spin without any resistance. You will feel the interplay between the copper and the magnet because the dielectric is being resisted.
Absolutely.
So moving on. Oh, we see Matt VK hopping in the chat. Good to see you, brother. Rocky Top Apologist, another guy I met at Nashville. Good to see you. He says, I'm late to electrophilo bioethnophysics class. It's a bit of a mouthful, but this is ethnophilo bioethnophysics 101. So if you've made it this far, you're doing well.
Okay. So next. All right. Wanted to touch on something you brought up last week, as I recall. Ground. What ground is, right? Mm-hmm. To specify when we talk about ground, like electrical ground, right? That there's no such thing as negative charge. That doesn't exist in nature. Saying negative charge would be like saying my shadow is negative light, or if I drink a full glass of water, the glass is now negatively full. That doesn't make any sense. That's crazy talk. It's a ground. It's a return to source. There's either charge or discharge only. There's not negative charge. Mm-hmm. So the charge is released as discharge when it's grounded. And I mean, you can look up any standard online definition that you can search on the internet, and it will say, quote, an electrical ground is a return to its source. Mm-hmm. A ground serves as a universal zero voltage point in a circuit. Well,
if I could jump in, I suspect that the insistence on there being positive and negative charge, it's tied kind of at the hip to the insistence that a magnet, they'll talk about a magnet as having a north and a south pole, as if those are two ontologically different things. What's rather, they're the same thing. They're observing vector specific phenomena, so like directionally specific phenomena, and because everything has to be a particle in their mind, if they see something going this way and then something going this way, they have to assume they're two different things, because one thing can't do two things in their framework. So they have to, that's why they keep coming up with all these extra particles to explain which is basically the same phenomena, just kind of viewed differently. They're ignoring the centripetal and the centrifugal conjugation of the magnetic field. But back to your comments.
Oh, I just wanted to make that point, and that's according to their definition, at least the one that I just read. I mean, that's one that I would actually agree with them on. That is a return to source. It's not negative charge. It's not inverse of charge. It's just a release valve of the built up tension.
Yeah.
So also,
and that whole concept is going to be
talked about.
Well, I was going to say that whole concept is going to be highly relevant at the end of tonight's show. So hold on to that in your minds, people.
It is, yes. It is. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to touch on it. We also talked about more than once. We talked about water. So I wanted to give some comments and more recommendations as far as that was concerned. First, of note, I think a quote from Nikola Tesla. Quote, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." And that sums up a lot of what we're talking about when we talked about water. We both made comments about the structure of water, how it ties into the general aspect of field theory, water being a polar molecule, which means it's got a positive charge and it has a ground. Therefore, water is like a dipole antenna.
I was waiting to see if you said positive and negative, but you caught yourself. I'm proud of you.
Positive charge and it has a ground. Oh, did I say it wrong?
No. I was waiting to see if you said positive and negative, but you held firm and you said positive and ground.
I did.
Yeah.
I was careful
So
in how I was going to
congratulations.
say it. Yep, I've made that slip more than once. So it's
the programming runs deep.
It's transforming incoming energy into something usable by the body. So analogously, you could think of it like a radio, where water acts as like the antenna, the receiving mechanism between the broadcast signal, which is sent via the ether to the radio, which is the body, by attenuating that signal in a way that the frequency can be coherently structured and therefore understood.
You could think of the brain in that case as essentially being the radio tuner.
Yeah, yes. But there has to be some way to filter out the noise and bring it in. So it isn't just random, nonsense going on. Right. Water, by the way, it's interesting, is the ingredient that actually provides the view, so to speak, along with the setup of the geometric shape of a circular Hallback array, controlling a magnetic flux in a MRI machine. So in a simple analogy, the MRI machine uses magnetism in order to electrically see your water, the fourth phase water of your meat suit. It's basically imaging the structure of your water. That's what it's creating the images of. That's
which is wild to think about. That we're Hallback array that you mentioned, that's, for those listening, that's HALBACH. And that's a particular arrangement of certain geometric shaped magnets that help to essentially focus the magnetic flux and tune it to a very precise degree.
Right. Yep. So anyway, so if anyone wanted to look further into some of the more fascinating properties of water, I wanted to make a few recommendations. First, I'd say Dr. Gerald Pollack's studies on the fourth phase water. That's an absolute must, from which Pollack shows through his lifelong work how this phase of water is the architecture of life, structured by sound and light. Then, of course, you have Jacques Benveniste and Luc Montagnier, Nobel laureates. They have extensive experimentation and documentation on water memory. And then, of course, there's this Dr. Masaru Emoto, He's done a lot of work showing how emotion influences water. That's highly intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah. The water memory aspect is, I've not gone down that rabbit hole as deeply as you have, but when you think about the fact that water can store memory, which seems to be a fact, I certainly have seen enough to where I believe that's the case, and then you think about how water supplies purify their water by just removing contaminants or whatever, but the water, remember, where it's been, and you think, that's been through a lot of people and a lot of sewage.
Yeah, the aspect of the water is not that much different than the aspects of a magnet, quantitative versus qualitative, when it comes to the water memory, just like you were just saying.
And if the concept of water storing memory seems a little too out there for people, have you ever looked into what is actually occurring in like a solid state hard drive, or even a spinning disk hard drive? You have essentially charged in a certain pattern that is encoded as information. So you're not actually storing a physical picture or document or whatever. It's, the zeros and ones of the binary code, but it's recorded as zeros and ones as essentially electrical states in that medium. And so if water being a polar molecule and having the ability essentially to be charged in a very particular manner, it's not much of a stretch of imagination to just think of water as being like the ultimate solid state hard drive, and really the ether is that as well. But that's a whole nother layer below that.
So also a couple of points on space-time and gravity, since I wasn't able to be here for that one. A couple things I wanted to add that Jonathan pointed out on last week's show. Gravity is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for those who accept the Einsteinian view of nature. A case in point would be, to quote physicist Bryce DeWitt in his Gravity Research Foundation essay, quote, "Before anyone can have the audacity to formulate even the most rudimentary plan of attack on the problem of harnessing the force of gravitation, he must understand the nature of his adversary. I take it as the most axiomatic that the phenomenon of gravitation is poorly understood even by the best of minds, and that the last word on it is far, very far indeed from having been spoken."
I appreciate his honesty.
So, yeah. I mean, by saying these words, harnessing the force of gravitation, and also by saying poorly understood, even by the best of minds, reveals just how overcomplicated some of these scientific materialists have made the study of nature. And
is what happens when you ignore the medium as well, because as I discussed last week, gravity, in quotes, is really is a property of the medium resolving tension. It's not a property of the objects in dispute. But go ahead.
Right. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the object. And the person probably most likely coming to mind when discussing gravity would obviously be Isaac Newton. To quote Newton, quote, "Gravity must be caused by an agent acting constantly according to certain laws, but whether this agent being material or immaterial, I have left to the consideration of my readers." That's Newton in his letters to Bentley, 1692. So this is why Newton famously stated hypothesis non fingo, meaning I make no hypothesis, or in other words, it made no sense to him. So for the atomists to explain the phenomenon of gravity, the reification of both space and time as genuine entities or principles became necessary. And then with that came all sorts of inventions like curvature of space and virtual particles and warped space-time.
It's warped for sure.
Yeah. So heavy on the quotes today, but I wanted to quote one from none other than Albert Einstein from The Structure of Scientific Thought, which is kind of ironic. Quote, "The axiomatic basis of theoretical physics cannot be an influence from experience, but must be a free invention." Or this other beauty, also from Einstein.
He didn't like coloring in between the lines, is what you're telling me.
This other quote from Einstein: "Propositions arrived at by purely logical means are completely empty as regards reality." I mean, to me, those statements, they speak for themselves. Per Einstein, experience and logic are antithetical
Yeah.
to understanding nature.
When you consider what the Greeks were able to figure out mathematically and all that, without having the tools at Einstein's disposal, they did it with basically just sheer logic and in different ways of applying logic. So that is such an utterly ridiculous statement.
So I'll throw this one in. This would be, I think, my last quote. It's one of my favorites. This one comes from none other than Tesla and talking about the irrational framing by Einstein. Quote, "The scientists of today think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane."
I love that quote. That's such a good quote.
So we've already talked about space is an attribute of magnetism. It's literally nothing more than distance between objects. It's not a thing. It has no properties. You cannot warp space.
Mm-hmm.
Time also doesn't exist as a principle. It's a measurement. It's the measurement of magnitudes of duration or distances between space. Without the measurement of space, time no longer exists. There's no time in counter space, so you cannot curve it. So
when you can't curve something that doesn't have Cartesian properties to it,
if it has no properties, how can you do anything to it? It'd be like saying, I'm going to take my shadow right now and smack it around. Or what you said last week, with Wendy tying the shadow to Peter Pan's ankle.
Well, and what this demonstrates is that people that reject a medium-based ontology and only accept a particle-based ontology run inherently into the problem of, we kind of need a medium. So they just sneak it in with other terms while still denying that there's a medium. And quantum is wholly guilty of that in many respects.
Certainly is. I mean, everything in the digital age that is advancing so quick is stuff that I like to call, and I've heard you call it too, call it field tech, right?
Yeah.
It's all point source and pretty much all of it. They run off of a combination of either lasers or magnets. It doesn't matter if it's computers, maglev trains, cell phones. It's all point source objects. I mean, TVs will probably be doing holography soon. That's all just a utilization of field dynamics. But being able to replicate doesn't mean that it's actually understood. It's field tech. It's not quantum.
Right. Well, that goes back to the quantum laundry basket and the quantum coffee table. He understood it enough how to use it, and then eventually you reach the limit of your understanding, and you kind of hit that wall, and all that.
So I guess last point that I was going to throw in for gravity, and weight and gravity are near synonymous in the mind of most people. Mm-hmm. Without having the time to explain it deeply, but a few points to make about it, that whether you're talking about either, and this will be relevant, is whether you're talking about either the gravity or the weight of something. It's medium specific. How else can a person take a boat that weighs thousands of pounds on land and put it in water and with very little effort can just push it right along?
Mm-hmm.
That's medium specific. Weight is also vector specific, it's location specific, magnitude specific, it's even phase specific. A spinning a spinning top, a spinning gyroscope weighs less while it's spinning.
Mm-hmm.
That's a phase.
There are YouTube channels that have demonstrated that, or you can get a cheap gyroscope and demonstrate that on your own with like a kitchen scale. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. So in other words, that means that all of these they're not functions of the mass of the object itself.
Right.
They're only relative to the field that's surrounding it. It's a conceptual attribute set of two masses relative to the medium that they're in, i.e. the ether.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a strong takeaway because again, people think of Earth's gravitational pull, the sun's gravitational pull, the moon's they are players on the stage, but the stage is the ether, and the ether is resolving the tension that is between them, just because objects are formations of the ether themselves. They have their own field signature, so to speak. And so when they get brought in, we saw that under the ferrocell last week, when you bring two magnets close to one another, you can see the field trying to resolve that tension. It distorts the field, and the field, by the way, like that's a point that maybe we haven't stressed enough, but the field is not the field of the magnet. The field is the field. And then the magnet is doing something to the field itself. So it's not necessarily like the magnet has its own little contained field. It's more of the impact it has on the field that is enveloping it.
So there's a point there to where it's structured coherently in the magnet surrounding it versus just scattered everywhere. But it's all the same field. Yeah.
Before we get into your anti-gravity stuff, Future Objective dropped a $5 rant. Thank you very much for that. He's something I find interesting that I don't believe has been covered yet with magnets is the phasing or gearing that occurs over distance when magnets have their poles oriented along a similar axis. I'm not entirely sure what he's referring to. Do you have any?
I caught only part of it, so I was trying to read it.
Yeah.
Something is the phasing or gearing that occurs over distance when magnets have their poles. Phasing or gearing over distance. I'm not sure by saying over distance, but certainly oriented along a similar axis.
I mean, that becomes, it's not necessarily multiplicative. Oh, my tongue is absolutely stuck. Multiplicative, thank you. Future Objective, it says they spin like a coin together on a table. I don't know. I'm not sure offhand what it is you're talking, but reach out on Telegram if you got a video or something. It's fun to get stuff like that and then try to think through them in a within this paradigm.
Right. Yeah. And maybe just the way that the question is structured, and then you go, oh, okay, I know what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay. But in the interest of time, let's move on to your stuff on anti-gravity, because you got some pretty good stuff here that is worth going through.
Okay. Well, I did have a couple half-ass videos I sent over.
Do you want to start with the videos?
It doesn't matter either way.
Okay.
Basically, well, you have the right-hand rule recap video or something. We can start with that because I keep referencing it.
Okay. You're talking about your video or
either one?
Okay, I'll pull this one up here. This is the Fleming rule. This is the one that you were demonstrating with the video you sent me, but we'll see what this does. Excuse the cheesy music.
Yeah.
So you have the force is the thumb. The magnetic flux is the forefinger, and the induced current is which would be the electrical current would be the middle finger. I don't know. I have the other one that shows that's the current is the thumb, and the fingers are wrapped around the conductor, or is that enough?
Around the conductor, yeah. This where my finger were the dielectric, my thumb the magnetic, and the my second finger would be the electrical.
Yeah.
They're all 90 degrees orthogonal to each other.
Your curled
90
fingers
degrees
show the
apart, 90
direction of the
degrees, 90
magnetic
degrees.
field.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just it's a geometrical expression of how the ether modalities move, their vectorization, how they move around. So when talking about so-called anti-gravity or anti-gravity craft, knowing that everything is field phenomena, field modalities all work off of the right-hand rule, then my level of understanding of field theory, of engineering, would lead me to the conclusion that there'd only be two types of anti-gravity possible. And a field drive or a craft of some type would be utilizing these in parallel. One more so than the other, but it'd be obvious why after looking at them. But these are just
the first video.
Sorry?
Do you want me to show the first video now, or you want to keep setting it up?
Yeah, these are just, they're geometric applications of the field, which field modality is being used, where and why. So yeah, you can play the
all right.
first.
So here, this is the first, basically geometry of what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm going to try another rigged stand setup here, drawing one-handed and holding the camera somewhat. This would be the first type. This would be like small object versus large surface, a repulsive drive. So the large surface being like the Earth would be a mutual mass acceleration. It is not point source. So basically you need a parabolic amplifier, a point source acceleration that is hyperbolic relative to the mass of the Earth, because you have all these various vectors in every direction trying to yank this thing down to the ground. The fact that the surface is incoherent, it's uneven ground, incoherent mass. So because of that, you have the Lamore frequency of gyromagnetic precession that must be overcome.
Which that's not something that we've actually spent a lot of time on. The Lamore frequency and all that.
It would be lengthy to try and do it now.
Yeah. I think what you've got, unless there's more at the end of the video, that this is basically showing what has to be overcome. And the geometry of one of these craft, which the flying saucer should immediately come to mind in people's brains as they think about
it's a logical geometric feature as to why almost every supposed UAP that you've ever seen by probably Skunkworks or Lockheed or even make-believe ones are shaped that way. There is a point.
Yeah. So there is some type of a drive on the inside that is essentially
canceling out gravity's pull in every direction.
Right. So it's countering each of these vectors by
and
essentially
that's pretty good summation.
Yeah. By essentially creating a null point in the ether, a low pressure point in the ether up above the craft.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then moving on to your second one here.
Yep.
Move this. Okay.
Okay. This would be the second. The first one would only apply if you have mass, obviously, underneath you that you're trying to overcome, the mutual mass acceleration of gravity. This type, simpler to draw, a little harder to explain, but basically, this would be a type of a field eraser, voiding the space rather than trying to push through it. So you'd have an arrangement like what I wish I had a pencil instead of a Sharpie, where you have an arrangement of magnets in a certain direction, which is just like, works the same way as a refrigerator magnet would work. So that this one connected is pointed this way, this way.
Left, right,
down,
up, right,
back, left,
down.
back, right.
Yeah.
All the magnetic flux is now unidirectional. It's on this side, and you have basically nothing on this side. They can also be arranged circularly, which is how an MRI machine is focused, so that you can either have all of the magnetic forces radiating outward, or in that case, everything pulling inward. So basically, that's what a Hallback array is. So since you don't have another mass, mutual mass that you're overcoming, you're basically going to create a gravity well, a imaginary well, so to speak, in space. And how you're going to do that, you need to, again, right-hand rule, manifest a null point of acceleration wherein which the ship is chasing after this false mass over here. This false mass, or gravity well right here. And to do that, you need to apply, to move this direction, right-hand rule would be applying a magnetic field orthogonally to it, coming out of here.
Because the magnetic and the dielectric are orthogonal to each other.
Guy in here, hey, how's it going? I'm having fun.
I am Wolf Hall.
So it'd be like a laser, light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. That's what a laser stands for, the acronym. There's also masers, which are the same thing as a laser, except it's not light, it's microwave. In this case, it would be kind of like a dazer, where you're using dielectricity to create this false mass well in front of you. Almost as if you could say, if this were all water, let's say, a different medium, and you wanted to go through, try going here, instead of pushing through with a lot of force behind, that's propulsion tech or explosion tech, instead you're going to create an emptiness, a vortex within the medium where there's nothing in the way of you getting there. That's basically how that would work.
And what is the vortex in the ether? The dielectric.
Yep. That's exactly right. Just like
dielectric
a discharge of lightning is a discharge of the dielectric into counter space.
So what you're talking about there is essentially, it's like, bad analogy, but it's like throwing out a ground in front of you, and then your craft grounds to it. And yes, especially because the magnetic is orthogonal to your path, and because you are essentially voiding the space in front of you and catapulting forward, you would not feel an accelerant.
Right. The inertia, the momentum, you wouldn't feel. Yeah.
You would not feel that.
Braking, all of that. Yep.
Which is why, because you're grounding your momentum back to the ether, which is why a craft that people, seem to witness, and if half the accounts are true, then we have craft that are going from, standing still to, Mach 5 in, split second, and they don't just disintegrate. And then they make a 90-degree right turn, and they don't disintegrate. Or they go from, sea level up to 80,000 feet in a matter of seconds, and they don't disintegrate. Because the people operating those craft, they don't feel like they're moving, because they're not accelerating through space. They're literally, essentially, hitching a ride on the dielectric, which is counterspatial.
Yes. So that's all the theory of exactly the geometric application of where and how you would apply these things. It doesn't explain the tremendous amount of energy that would be required to do that. Mm-hmm. Right. This is just the geometry of what it would be.
Right.
It's the same as scalar wave technology.
Right. CSUS B Geochem mentioned ionization drives, which is essentially the Byfield Brown effect.
Yes.
That is the particle classification of what's going on there, because it needs to be something that pushes. It's not something that propels you. It is asymmetry, creating an asymmetry in the ether by means of with a Biefeld Brown effect. You have a larger dielectric surface and then a smaller conductor up on the top. It creates an asymmetry, and you're essentially creating a avoidance zone above that craft, and it's essentially draining upwards. And so so it's not a drive, it's a drain.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the basics of which we wanted to kind of describe some of the technology that could be used from an anti-gravitational perspective. As far as like the energy to drive something like that, nothing is available commercially, certainly right now, that could, because that would take tremendous amount of voltage to accomplish something like that.
Yeah, like a continuous lightning strike level of voltage is what you would need. So that's got to be free energy, something from 0 point.
Yes, which there are companies that are working. So Zach pointed this one out to me. I mentioned it on the live stream last week. That it's Casimir Space Company, CASIMIR Space Company, and they were experimenting with something called the Casimir effect. We don't have enough time left tonight to really go deep into it, but what it seems like to me they have done is the Casimir effect basically is two plates very close together, and there's a seemingly external force pressing them in. What they don't realize is that they're creating a space of gravity in between those plates, and those plates are having to void the tension back to the ether, and it draws them together. They interpret it as an exterior force pressing them inward. And there is actually a slight release of charge when that happens. So what Casimir Space Company seems to have figured out how to do is to prevent the plates from sticking to each other by manipulating geometry of these little towers inside. And this is all like on a nano scale. The like pillars separating these plates. Something about the geometry allows them essentially to continually recharge, effectively a capacitor. So it sounds like they've created a capacitor. That just continue. You drain it and it's got charge. It's recharged again. That would be essentially 0 point energy. So it would seem that something like that is scalable, and it would seem like they claim that they're going to be production level for something small enough to power AirPods or a hearing aid or something like that within the next few years. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. We're going to go ahead and do is switch gears from the technical and move into the theological, and working off that whole concept of ground. I wrote a paper. I actually recorded an episode with Ash on Friday for tomorrow night, in which we discussed this paper. But I'm going to go ahead and read this on air. This is the debut of this, and I've entitled this "The Ether as the Fingerprint of the Trinity." So I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then we'll have a few minutes to discuss. Typically, seeking ground is thought of in context of an electrical charge in a circuit seeking to discharge to ground, return to zero, equalize. However, this phenomenon isn't just electrical. It represents a ubiquitous pattern in nature that crosses over many spheres of scientific inquiry: electrical, chemical, meteorological, geographic, and so on. Any charged or agitated state, whether that's electric, pressure, torque, always resolves to a state of rest once that charged state is released. This isn't a random curiosity of physics. It is one of the most fundamental aspects of the structure of reality itself, and it isn't confined to the physical world. Cursory thought about the nature of human relationships reveals that the same pattern exists within friendships, families, societies, markets, politics, even within our own minds. Enduring story structure leans heavily on this principle. Audiences are drawn to stories with tension and catharsis, not because it's a clever narrative gimmick, but because these types of stories are channeling the literal fabric of reality. Musicians rely on dissonance to draw their listeners in as they eagerly anticipate the resolution. Without even being told that such a thing is good, humans everywhere naturally thread this pattern into literally everything. Whatever the particulars may be, and whatever the terminology is decided to be, it is profoundly simple and deeply theological. Leaning heavily on the Apostle Paul's declaration in Romans 1:20 that God's invisible attributes are clearly seen in the things that he has made, I strongly assert that all scientific inquiry, all mathematics, all logic, even that which has become distorted, is unavoidably theological, and answering why nature always seeks ground is a beautiful example of this. The Greeks perfected an exercise of logic I call the principle and attribute chain. The study of an attribute inevitably points to its principle, and upon further examination, either directly through experimentation or indirectly through logic, that principle is revealed as the attribute of a yet higher principle. And on this process goes until a principle is reached that can no longer be attributed to anything higher or reduced to anything simpler. It is the terminal principle. The Greeks, in their Neoplatonic emanationist paradigm, eschewing the possibility that such a principle could be personal, reasoned that the ether was that terminal principle, the underlying non-physical substrate to all of reality. But in mistakenly believing that an impersonal, will-less, mindless ether could emanate a personal, willful, and mindful creature such as man, they fell short of the true, self-determining, self-similar, and self-sustaining terminal principle, as Scripture reveals, I am that I am, God himself, whose being requires no explanation outside of himself because he is being. Applying the principle attribute chain, we can infer that since we humans leave our personal mark on the things that we create, it is logical to assume that we do so because God has done so. This serves as the basis, aside from Paul's observation, for the assertion that the study of nature is theological. God can be known by studying his handiwork. Scripture teaches that God is three persons, but one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Those who were paying attention in Sunday school might recall the Father is God, but is not the Son, and is not the Spirit. The Son is God, but is not the Father, and is not the Spirit. The Spirit is God, but is not the Father, and is not the Son. The Father is revealed as the source, the Son as the radiative image or logos, and the Spirit is the means or living bond between them, the drawing in and unifying force. This self-existent relationship is one unified deity. As one unified deity is not an external modality imposed on God. It is how he has revealed himself in Scripture. Source, radiative, return. Following the idea that God can be known by observing his creation, the ether, the most fundamental stratum of created reality, bears precisely this triadic structure. The ether is the source, the magnetic is the radiative, spatial, centrifugal release of charge, and the dielectric, the electrostatic, is the centripetal inertial, that is back to inert, and counterspatial path back to the source, the ground. They are inseparable, and they exist in an incommensurable relationship. Their sustained conjugate expression is the basis for all natural phenomena: light, matter, electricity, gravity, everything. This triadic clay exists as the most striking parallel to the very essence of the Creator, but it is not the Creator. And even though it operates in the same manner in which the Trinity is, it is also not made in his image. That distinction belongs to man, but that is a discussion for a different time. Even still, the ether and the entire created order down the principle and attribute chain demonstrates this Trinitarian pattern at every level, because creation does not merely imitate God, it participates in the order that flows from his nature. The Bible states plainly that God is love. Not that God is loving, since that would imply a concept that exists outside of love and above God, but that God is love. Human understanding of love is therefore a metaphysical echo of the nature of God. Love is not at its root sentiment or affection, but rather is the act and preceding motivations of an offering of oneself to another, and that other returning itself to the one without either being consumed in the exchange. As it pertains to God, while it appears as though only two persons are involved, the mutual self-donation is the Spirit. St. Augustine saw this, the lover, the beloved, and the love between them, not a third thing added to the Father and Son from outside, but what their relationship is, subsisting as a person: source, radiative, ground. And so, returning to the ether is the source, the magnetic is the radiative, and the dielectric is the inertial, the return to ground. Their conjugate engagement, the sustained giving of each other, in sustained giving of each into the other without mutual annihilation, is the created reverberation of that divine eternal act and nature, the fingerprint of God imprinted in the clay with which he fashioned our reality. Why then does everything in nature seek ground? Because everything in nature participates in, declares, and celebrates the very essence of its creator, and grounding with all of the similar pressure mediating phenomena in nature is something nature must do to declare the essence of the creator's radiation and return in love. Love, then, is the ontological reality that physics has been tracing all along. The eternal self-giving of source into expression and expression back into source through the inertial love without loss, without end, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. As such, the ether's triadic nature and structure is not a coincidence. Physics, at its foundation, is not running on blind forces. It is purposefully theological through and through. Not because of our imposition, but because getting physics right leads you inescapably to the same place that revelation does, just as the Apostle Paul declared to the Romans. And those thoughts were formulated thinking through that question, why does everything in nature seek ground? And you start to realize that there's this pattern. And because God created it, it made sense to me that the reason would be found in his nature. I'm going to post that on my Substack after the show tonight. But
That's fantastic.
Anyway, you had some thoughts in regards to that?
I don't know how I could add to that. I would say, as we've been talking about God's creation, trying to understand and appreciate it as Romans 1:20 instructs. Mm-hmm. I found it notable that it was by this very same application of following scripture when observing nature that Michael Faraday used in his work, in his research, and his thought process. Imagine that.
Yeah, you were sending me some of his quotes.
They're discoveries,
powerful. Yeah.
Would prove that the study of nature is, if you've said repeatedly, a theological pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you sent me some great quotes from him, and then also from Maxwell as well.
Yep. James
so many great men of science started with a perspective that they were trying. In fact, Faraday quoted Romans 1:20 a lot in his lectures, and it's sad to me that is not ubiquitous in the scientific world today. That seemed to be more commonplace in their day, back in the 1800s. And you can infer the effect or the design by the effect, and the effect of the quantum world and the move to an atomistic perspective seems to be to try to eliminate God as a possibility for explaining anything, because it has to be science. But that's the inverse. And there are many, many Christians and good people that are involved in a particle physics based, ontology. But I think they're mistaken, obviously. And I think that they're mistaken because the starting point is wrong. And that's the that demonstrates why it's important to have your epistemology kind of squared away, because as you go and explore the world, you're going to end up in the wrong place if you don't start with God being the terminal principle.
Amen, brother.
Okay. That is all we have for everyone tonight. Chris Paul is the guest on the narrative tonight. So I hope everyone has a lot of coffee in their bloodstream, because I imagine that's going to be very deep and very long conversation. As I mentioned, tomorrow night on Culture of a Change with Ash, we recorded an episode last Friday. It is her birthday tomorrow night, so she did not want to be on air live for that. So make sure you pop into the chat and wish her a happy birthday. And then also General Quast was intrigued and liked the essay that I just read and wants to discuss it with me. So I'm going to be rejoining him on his show, Space Revolution. Was the 17th. So that will be live. And so Looking forward to that conversation. He was intrigued and said he knew enough about electromagnetic field theory that he could track along with it pretty well. So that should be an interesting conversation. But Paul, you got any closing thoughts?
No, it's been a lot of fun, and I'll definitely be around. I'll be back. Close out this chapter for now.
Yeah, this has been the introductory primer, Ether 101. Thank you so much to everyone for sticking around and asking good questions and keeping the chat lively. And like I said, hop over to the Telegram chat if you want to ask further questions. And that's t.me/the No Treason podcast. But with that, we're going to go ahead and say good night. Thanks, Paulie, brother. It's been awesome having you on. And I look forward to when we can collab again.
Yeah, you too. Take care, everybody.
Right. Cheers, everyone.
Why a spoon, cousin? Why not an axe?
Because it's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.